With me now to get some more information about how much this would cost is Parliamentary Budget Officer Yves Giroux. Hi, Mr. Giroux. Good to see you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming into studio. Let's go over the bottom line. Essentially, the government boosted this, as I said in the introduction already, to seniors over 75, but the Bloc wants it expanded to 65 to 74. What's the price tag based on your calculations?
Based on our calculation, it would cost about $3 billion per year, rising to $3.5 billion after a few years, for a 5-year total of about $16 billion.
And how are you calculating that? Is that based on how many, is it based on population growth and aging demographics, that kind of thing?
Yes, it's based on population growth. It's fairly easy to predict how many seniors there will be over time because we unfortunately all get 1 year older with every year that goes by, and demographic factors don't come into play that much when it comes to that segment of the population. So it's a matter of determining how many seniors will be there or exist or will continue to be there receiving that benefit, and estimating the difference between OAS plus 10% or OAS as we know it right now.
So if the government were to acquiesce to the Bloc's demand, and let me point out to our audience that that private member's bill, everyone voted in favor of except for Liberals when it did come to pass. Interestingly, Conservatives, NDP, they all voted with the Bloc. You heard from Minister Duclos there. He did not seem overly enthusiastic to do it anytime soon. But let's say they do, to keep them in power, keep themselves in power, to negotiate with the Bloc. Essentially, are you saying it's an extra $16 billion to book into the budget?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's at least $3 billion per year ongoing, rising, as I said, to 3.5 within a few years due to inflation and the demographic of that population, segment of the population. And it would also be a bit tricky to make that fit within the fiscal framework that the government has indicated itself in the last budget. So that would be a significant chunk of change, to say the least, to make fit into the fiscal anchors that the government has set for itself.
And remind us what those fiscal anchors are. I think they came in about a year ago in the last fall's economic statement, right?
Yes, so the government has indicated it wants to have the debt to GDP ratio be on a steady decline over time. Also that the deficit should not be bigger than 1% of GDP by 26, 27 and afterwards. And also it wanted to have a budget deficit that was no higher than $40 billion, I think, in the current fiscal year. So all these constraints would be at severe risk if the government was to acquiesce to that demand without cutting expenditures elsewhere.
And can you sort of also contextualize that as a line item? Like, obviously within the fiscal anchors, it's a big deal. Like, is $16 billion, I mean, it sounds like a lot. Is it a lot in the framework of the federal government's fiscal kind of balance sheet?
Yes and no. The government spends about $500 billion per year. Of that, about $80 billion goes to seniors' benefits, so old age security, GIS, and so on. So adding $3.5 billion to seniors' benefit would be significant in and of itself. On the other hand, the government is already spending $80 billion per year on seniors' benefits, but it's also spending about $25 billion per year on employment insurance. So it's a lot of money. But in the grand scheme of things, $500 billion, could the government afford $3.5 billion more? It depends what the trade-offs the government is ready to make.
Right, so they could rate, I mean, like any government, they have available to them options of cutting spending elsewhere or raising taxes. But they haven't indicated that they obviously will do any of that.
Not so far, but maybe in a fall update, the government will, if they acquiesce to that request, will lay out how they will pay for that and which of their fiscal anchors they're willing to let go of.
And do you have a sense of, I mean, you talked a little bit about how much is on elderly benefits. If, for example, this was something that they did adopt more permanently, you've calculated 5 years out. Mm-hmm. If the population keeps aging, is that an extra $3 billion minimum ad endum?
Oh, for sure. It's something that will keep on rising. We say $3 billion in the first year, 3.5 after 3-4 years, but you can easily imagine a world where it would be 4.5 as the baby boom cohorts keeps getting older and also the Canadian population grows. So we all, as I said, we all get 1 year older and inevitably we get closer to 65, the time where we collect old age security, for those eligible, of course. So it's something that will keep on growing.
Okay, gotcha. Very helpful. One quick question for you before you go, just because the last time you were in the headlines was over the carbon tax and the calculation involving the industrial side. You were going to update that. Is that coming soon? Do you anticipate?
I anticipate by early November, maybe by Halloween.
Okay, well, stay tuned for that. Mr. Giroux, I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.